The ancient holographic display flickered with a constellation of star systems, each point representing decades of careful observation, preparation, and an unspoken readiness that few beyond Earth's most classified circles could comprehend. Admiral Helena Rodriguez traced her fingers along the luminescent map, her touch causing pinpricks of light to pulse with subtle intelligence. Humanity's position in the galactic hierarchy had been carefully cultivated, a deliberate illusion of weakness that masked an unprecedented depth of preparation. The Consolidated Stellar Alliance, CSA, maintained exhaustive records on emerging species, and their assessment of Earth was remarkably consistent. A young civilization, technologically nascent, politically fragmented, and ultimately inconsequential. What the Alliance's sophisticated monitoring systems failed to detect was the intricate network of research facilities, underground laboratories, and orbital research stations that had been meticulously developed over the past 7 decades. Each appeared unremarkable: scattered research outposts, modest scientific installations, seemingly competitive international space programs. The reality was far more complex. The first seeds of Earth's true potential had been planted in the aftermath of the Global Collaborative Research Act of 2052, a watershed moment that transformed international scientific competition into unprecedented cooperation. Where previous generations had been divided by political boundaries, the emerging global scientific community recognized a fundamental truth: survival would depend on unity. Initial alien contact had occurred in 2061, a brief, carefully managed encounter that lasted less than 17 minutes. To the outside observer, it appeared to be a mundane diplomatic exchange. In reality, it was a calculated intelligence-gathering operation that provided humanity with its first comprehensive insights into galactic civilization. The Krail Imperium represented the most significant threat to emerging civilizations in 3 spiral arms of the Milky Way. Their method of conquest was systematic and ruthless. Identify potential technological threats, infiltrate communication networks, disable critical infrastructure, and consume resources with mechanical precision. Dozens of civilizations had already fallen to their biomechanical legions. Admiral Rodriguez understood the stakes with crystalline clarity. The holographic display before her represented more than just star systems and potential invasion routes. It was a complex tactical map developed through decades of covert research, predictive modeling, and technological innovation that would shock the galactic community. Orbital Station Prometheus served as the primary command and control center for humanity's most classified defense initiative. Located at the Lagrange point between Earth and Luna, the station appeared to be a standard international research facility. Its true purpose was far more critical: a nerve center that could coordinate a multi-layered defense strategy developed through decades of preparation. The station's design incorporated technologies that would be unrecognizable to most alien civilizations. Quantum communication relays disguised as standard communication arrays. Adaptive defense systems that could reconfigure molecular structures in microseconds. Holographic projection systems that could create entire false environments with microscopic precision. Military strategists had long recognized that humanity's greatest strength was not raw technological power, but adaptability. Where other civilizations developed rigid, predictive systems, humans thrived on chaos, creativity, and the ability to transform limitations into opportunities. The first wave of the Krail invasion was already being predicted by complex algorithmic models. Quantum computers running millions of potential scenarios had mapped out likely invasion strategies with remarkable precision. Each potential approach had been analyzed, dissected, and a corresponding counter-strategy developed. What the Krail did not understand, what no alien civilization had yet comprehended, was humanity's capacity for unified action. Decades of global challenges had transformed human society. Climate adaptation, resource management, and technological innovation had created a species that could transform challenges into opportunities with unprecedented speed. Admiral Rodriguez allowed herself a momentary smile. The Krail Imperium believed they were preparing to conquer another primitive civilization. They had no idea that humanity had been preparing for this moment for generations. The silent threat was not humanity's perceived weakness. It was their carefully cultivated, meticulously planned potential for total warfare. The global research network operated like a living organism, its components so deeply integrated that no single government or institution could fully comprehend its entire scope. Dr. Marcus Chen understood this better than most. His office at the Quantum Warfare Research Facility looked deceptively ordinary. Pale grey walls, lined with seemingly standard academic credentials, holographic displays that appeared to show routine scientific modeling. In reality, the facility represented the pinnacle of human technological innovation, a nexus where the most brilliant minds from every continent converged under the most extraordinary security protocols ever devised. The global scientific collaborative had transformed what once seemed like national competition into a unified human endeavor. Ken's primary research focused on adaptive quantum communication systems that could fundamentally rewrite the understanding of information transfer. Traditional communication relied on established protocols, predictable signal patterns that could be intercepted, decoded, and understood. His work created something entirely different, a communication matrix that was simultaneously everywhere and nowhere, capable of changing its fundamental transmission characteristics faster than any known scanning technology could track. The technological breakthroughs emerged from unexpected collaborations. A materials engineer from Sao Paulo would contribute a molecular reconfiguration technique that would be integrated with a quantum physics breakthrough for a research station in Vladivostok. An artificial intelligence specialist from Nairobi would develop an algorithm that complemented a zero-point energy research project in Singapore. Deep beneath the Atacama Desert, a massive underground research complex housed technologies that would revolutionize space warfare. Holographic camouflage systems could create entire false environments, rendering massive shipyards and research facilities invisible to external scanning. Adaptive metamaterials developed through a combination of quantum engineering and advanced biomimetic research could reconfigure their molecular structure in microseconds, providing unprecedented defensive capabilities. The warship construction program represented the most ambitious technological undertaking in human history. Shipyards disguised as standard orbital research stations were spread across the solar system, in the asteroid belt, around the moons of Jupiter and Saturn, in carefully selected Lagrange points that appeared unremarkable to external observation. Each vessel represented a quantum leap in spacecraft design. Traditional propulsion systems had been entirely reimagined. Instead of relying on chemical rockets or ion drives, these ships utilized quantum vacuum manipulation technologies that could essentially create localized spacetime distortions. A ship could effectively surf through space, using the fabric of spacetime itself as a propulsion mechanism. The defensive systems were equally revolutionary. Adaptive armor that could dynamically reconfigure at the molecular level, responding to specific weapon frequencies in microseconds. Distributed computational systems that transformed each ship into a living, thinking combat entity. Where alien civilizations developed rigid, predictive combat algorithms, human ships would embrace chaos and creativity as tactical advantages. Dr. Chen reviewed the latest simulation results, his fingers dancing across holographic interfaces that displayed complex quantum entanglement patterns. The latest test results were beyond promising. They were revolutionary. The team had successfully developed a communication and coordination system that allowed multiple ships to function as a single, adaptive organism. Military strategists had long understood that humanity's greatest strength was not raw technological power, but adaptability. Previous conflicts on Earth had demonstrated time and again that human beings could transform limitations into opportunities with unprecedented speed and creativity. The global research network operated on principles that would be incomprehensible to most alien civilizations. No single institution controlled the entire project. Information was distributed, redundant, constantly evolving. Each breakthrough was immediately shared across the entire human research network, creating a collective intelligence that was greater than the sum of its parts. Funding came from a complex web of sources: government black budgets, private research initiatives, international collaborative grants. On the surface, each project appeared independent, unrelated. The truth was far more sophisticated. A meticulously planned global effort that had been preparing for this moment for generations. As Dr. Chen completed his review, he understood the true significance of their work. This was more than a technological development. This was the moment humanity would prove its place in the galactic community, not as a supplicant or a developing species, but as a force to be recognized, respected, and ultimately understood. The preparation was complete. The silent threat was about to become a thunderous reality. The Krail scout ships entered the Sol system with the calculated precision of a predatory machine. Commander Vornak reviewed the initial sensor data with clinical detachment, his biomechanical neural networks processing information at speeds that would overwhelm most biological intelligence systems. Passive scans revealed exactly what the Krail intelligence algorithms predicted: a developing civilization on the cusp of meaningful interstellar capabilities, but ultimately primitive and ripe for conquest. The holographic displays in the command module of the lead scout vessel compiled data points that painted a picture of remarkable weakness. Earth's orbital infrastructure appeared rudimentary. Communication networks seemed fragmented. Defensive capabilities were minimal at best. The planetary energy signature suggested a civilization still heavily dependent on fossil fuels and early-stage fusion technologies. Every metric confirmed the Krail's standard conquest protocols would proceed with minimal resistance. What Vornak and his fleet did not understand was the intricate deception being carefully orchestrated by human intelligence networks. Every scan, every intercepted communication, every moment of observation was being deliberately manipulated through a multi-layered counterintelligence strategy that had been decades in the making. The Global Human Response Team operated from a series of distributed command centers, each appearing to be standard research or military facilities. In reality, they formed a single adaptive intelligence network that could respond to alien observation with microscopic precision. Holographic projections created false orbital infrastructure. Carefully crafted communication signals suggested technological limitations and internal political fragmentation. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, no relation to the Admiral, led the counterintelligence division responsible for alien perception management. Her team had spent years developing a comprehensive understanding of alien scanning technologies, predictive algorithms, and communication protocols. They understood that the key to survival was not just technological superiority, but the ability to control perception. Quantum computers running millions of predictive scenarios had mapped out likely Krail observation strategies. Each potential scan would trigger a carefully constructed response, a digital Potemkin village that would confirm the aliens' most deeply held assumptions about emerging civilizations. The Krail classification system categorized developing species into precise hierarchical levels. Humanity would be positioned as a mid-tier civilization, technologically promising but ultimately manageable. Sensor ghosts suggested limited space exploration capabilities. Fabricated communication records implied internal conflicts that would prevent unified resistance. Vornak's primary analysis matrix reported exactly what the human counterintelligence team wanted him to see: limited fusion capabilities, rudimentary quantum computing developments, fragmented global governance, a species that showed promise but was generations away from meaningful galactic interaction. Each piece of false information was backed by layers of complexity that would withstand even the most sophisticated alien intelligence probing. Scientific papers that appeared genuine, fabricated satellite imagery, communication networks that seemed organic in their imperfection. The entire system was a masterpiece of technological deception. The human team understood a fundamental truth about intelligence gathering. It was not about hiding everything, but about revealing precisely what would be most convincing. Small imperfections made the deception more believable. A slightly inefficient communication protocol here, a marginally outdated technological approach there. Vornak's neural network calculated the probability of human resistance at less than 0.03%. The Krail Imperium had consumed hundreds of civilizations using similar conquest protocols. Each species followed a predictable pattern: initial reconnaissance, strategic assessment, targeted infrastructure disruption, and final subjugation. What the Krail did not understand was the fundamental nature of human innovation. Where other species developed rigid, predictive systems, humans thrived on uncertainty. Every limitation was an opportunity, every constraint a potential avenue for unexpected solution. As the scout ships completed their initial survey, the human counterintelligence team allowed themselves a moment of collective satisfaction. The first phase of their plan was complete. The Krail saw exactly what humanity wanted them to see: a civilization of no consequence, ripe for conquest. The trap was set. The deception was perfect. And the Krail Imperium had no idea what was about to happen. The first wave of Krail assault ships emerged from quantum translation space with mechanical precision. 17 vessels, each a biomechanical marvel of destruction that had conquered dozens of civilizations across 3 spiral arms of the galaxy. Their weapon systems hummed with destructive potential, predictive combat algorithms calculating engagement strategies with cold, mathematical certainty. Commander Vornak's primary tactical display showed the solar system laid out like a strategic game board. Projected invasion vectors highlighted potential human population centers, critical infrastructure, and military installations. The biomechanical interfaces pulsed with an almost predatory anticipation, running millions of combat scenarios per microsecond. What appeared to be empty regions of space suddenly came alive with movement. The human vessels materialized as if born from the fabric of space itself, a phenomenon that immediately disrupted every single one of the Krail's predictive models. The UES Defiance, Admiral Helena Rodriguez's flagship, led the initial counterattack. Its exterior appeared deceptively simple, a sleek, almost minimalist design that gave no indication of the revolutionary technologies concealed within its molecular structure. The ship's adaptive skin could reconfigure at the quantum level, transforming its defensive and offensive capabilities faster than the Krail's most advanced targeting systems could comprehend. Quantum entanglement communication allowed the human fleet to operate with a level of coordination that defied traditional understanding of fleet mechanics. Each vessel functioned both as an individual combat unit and as a collective intelligence, sharing tactical information instantaneously across distances that would typically require minutes or hours of communication lag. The Krail's initial assault strategy relied on overwhelming force and predictive combat algorithms that had systematically dismantled hundreds of civilizations. Their weapon systems were designed to target specific technological signatures, disable critical infrastructure, and create cascading systemic failures. Against most species, this approach had been infallible. Humans introduced chaos into that carefully constructed system. The first volley of Krail energy weapons passed through carefully generated holographic decoys, perfect replicas of human vessels that absorbed and redirected energy in ways that completely contradicted the laws of physics as understood by the alien invaders. For every real human ship, there were multiple projected duplicates that responded to attacks with impossible precision. Rodriguez's tactical team had spent decades studying alien warfare protocols. They understood that most advanced civilizations developed combat systems based on predictable mathematical models. Humanity's approach was fundamentally different, embracing unpredictability as a strategic advantage. Each human vessel carried adaptive quantum computing systems that could instantaneously analyze incoming weapon signatures and develop counter strategies faster than the weapons could be fired. Defensive systems didn't just block or absorb incoming attacks. They actively learned from them, creating dynamic shields that evolved in real time. The Krail commanders watched in growing confusion as their perfectly calculated invasion began to unravel. Weapon systems that had systematically dismantled dozens of civilizations suddenly found themselves redirected, absorbed, or simply ineffective. The human fleet moved with a fluidity that suggested something beyond standard combat programming. It almost appeared to be thinking. Vornak's primary neural network began to generate error messages, a phenomenon the biomechanical commander had never experienced in centuries of galactic conquest. The human vessels weren't just defending, they were actively transforming the entire nature of the engagement. Quantum displacement fields created by the human ships generated localized space-time distortions that made traditional targeting impossible. A Krail vessel might fire at a human ship, only to have the weapon pass through an area that was no longer occupying the expected spatial coordinates. The ambush was more than a military engagement. It was a fundamental challenge to everything the Krail understood about warfare, technological development, and the nature of intelligent species. As the first hour of engagement concluded, the Krail fleet found itself not just challenged, but fundamentally confused. The seemingly primitive civilization they had come to conquer was revealing capabilities that violated every known principle of technological warfare. Humanity had been preparing for this moment for generations, and the galaxy was about to witness something unprecedented. The quantum warfare algorithms developed by Dr. Marcus Chen represented a fundamental reimagining of combat intelligence. Where traditional military systems relied on predetermined response protocols, these algorithms embraced uncertainty as a strategic advantage. Each human vessel became a living, adaptive combat entity, capable of learning, predicting, and countering alien technologies in real time. Adaptive armor systems represented the pinnacle of human technological innovation. At the molecular level, the ship's exterior could reconfigure instantaneously, shifting its molecular structure to counter specific weapon frequencies. What appeared to be a solid hull could transform into a complex energy-dispersing matrix within microseconds, rendering the most advanced Krail weaponry virtually ineffective. Communication between human vessels transcended traditional technological limitations. Quantum entanglement allowed for instantaneous information sharing that seemed to defy the fundamental laws of physics. Each ship was simultaneously an individual unit and part of a collective intelligence, sharing tactical information faster than the Krail could process their own sensor data. The most shocking aspect of human technological supremacy was its unpredictability. Krail combat algorithms were designed around precise mathematical models of warfare, predictable patterns that had systematically conquered hundreds of civilizations. Human technology introduced a fundamental element of chaos that completely overwhelmed these sophisticated systems. Dr. Chen's team had developed something revolutionary, a combat intelligence that could learn and adapt faster than any known technological system. Where alien technologies followed rigid programming, human systems embraced creativity as a fundamental combat strategy. A human ship could instantaneously develop a completely novel defensive or offensive approach based on milliseconds of engagement data. Vornak's biomechanical neural networks began to generate error messages, a phenomenon that had never occurred in centuries of galactic conquest. The human vessels weren't just defending themselves. They were actively rewriting the fundamental understanding of technological warfare. Quantum displacement fields, generated by the human ships, created localized space-time distortions that made traditional targeting impossible. Krail weapon systems found themselves firing at locations that no longer existed in the expected spatial coordinates. Each engagement became a complex dance of technological innovation, with human ships moving with a fluidity that suggested something beyond standard combat programming. The technological supremacy was more than just a military advantage. It was a fundamental challenge to everything the Krail understood about technological development, intelligence, and the nature of adaptive systems. Humanity had transformed limitation into opportunity, creating a combat approach that was simultaneously scientific breakthrough and artistic expression. Part 6. Psychological Warfare. The human approach to psychological warfare transcended traditional military strategies. Where most civilizations viewed combat as a purely technological engagement, humanity understood conflict as a multidimensional challenge that encompassed communication, perception, and cultural adaptability. Communication interception teams, led by Dr. Elena Rodriguez, began systematically dismantling the Krail's communication networks. False signal patterns were introduced, complex mathematical sequences that looked like legitimate communications but contained layers of deliberate confusion. Each intercepted transmission was an opportunity to sow uncertainty, to create doubt in the most fundamental systems of the alien invasion force. Holographic projections created entire false battle scenarios. Krail sensors would detect what appeared to be massive human fleet movements, only to find nothing when they investigated. Tactical illusions were crafted with such precision that they would survive multiple layers of computational verification, introducing a level of uncertainty that began to destabilize the alien fleet's collective decision-making processes. The human team understood a profound psychological principle. Advanced technological systems were most vulnerable not to direct attacks, but to fundamental uncertainty. Each false signal, each manipulated communication channel, each deliberately introduced anomaly created exponential levels of computational stress on the Krail's biomechanical intelligence networks. Vornak's command systems began to generate increasingly erratic response protocols. The carefully constructed invasion strategy started to unravel as human psychological warfare techniques introduced levels of complexity that the Krail's predictive algorithms could not process. Cultural databases suggested that the Krail Imperium had never encountered a species that used psychological manipulation as a primary warfare strategy. Most conquered civilizations responded with direct military resistance or immediate capitulation. Humanity did something entirely different. They transformed the entire concept of resistance into a multi-layered, adaptive strategy that defied conventional understanding. False communication channels suggested internal human conflicts that should have made unified resistance impossible. Yet every Krail analysis of these channels revealed an underlying coherence that they could not comprehend. The psychological warfare was so sophisticated that it challenged the fundamental alien understanding of species-level communication and coordination. Dr. Rodriguez's team had spent decades studying alien communication protocols, developing a comprehensive understanding of how different species process information. The psychological warfare was not just about creating confusion. It was about introducing a level of complexity that would fundamentally challenge the Krail's understanding of intelligent response. As the engagement continued, the Krail fleet found themselves increasingly paralyzed by uncertainty. Every computational model, every predictive algorithm began to generate more questions than answers. Humanity had transformed psychological warfare into a precise scientific discipline, a weapon more devastating than any physical technology. The human approach to psychological warfare transcended traditional military strategies. Where most civilizations viewed combat as a purely technological engagement, humanity understood conflict as a multidimensional challenge that encompassed communication, perception, and cultural adaptability. Communication interception teams led by Dr. Elena Rodriguez began systematically dismantling the Krail's communication networks. False signal patterns were introduced, complex mathematical sequences that looked like legitimate communications but contained layers of deliberate confusion. Each intercepted transmission was an opportunity to sow uncertainty, to create doubt in the most fundamental systems of the alien invasion force. Holographic projections created entire false battle scenarios. Krail sensors would detect what appeared to be massive human fleet movements, only to find nothing when they investigated. Tactical illusions were crafted with such precision that they would survive multiple layers of computational verification, introducing a level of uncertainty that began to destabilize the alien fleet's collective decision-making processes. The human team understood a profound psychological principle. Advanced technological systems were most vulnerable not to direct attacks, but to fundamental uncertainty. Each false signal, each manipulated communication channel, each deliberately introduced anomaly created exponential levels of computational stress on the Krail's biomechanical intelligence networks. Vormac's command systems began to generate increasingly erratic response protocols. The carefully constructed invasion strategy started to unravel as human psychological warfare techniques introduced levels of complexity that the Krail's predictive algorithms could not process. Cultural databases suggested that the Krail Imperium had never encountered a species that used psychological manipulation as a primary warfare strategy. Most conquered civilizations responded with direct military resistance or immediate capitulation. Humanity did something entirely different. They transformed the entire concept of resistance into a multi-layered, adaptive strategy that defied conventional understanding. False communication channels suggested internal human conflicts that should have made unified resistance impossible. Yet every Krail analysis of these channels revealed an underlying coherence that they could not comprehend. The psychological warfare was so sophisticated that it challenged the fundamental alien understanding of species-level communication and coordination. Dr. Rodriguez's team had spent decades studying alien communication protocols, developing a comprehensive understanding of how different species process information. The psychological warfare was not just about creating confusion. It was about introducing a level of complexity that would fundamentally challenge the Krail's understanding of intelligent response. As the engagement continued, the Krail fleet found themselves increasingly paralyzed by uncertainty. Every computational model, every predictive algorithm began to generate more questions than answers. Humanity had transformed psychological warfare into a precise scientific discipline, a weapon more devastating than any physical technology. The battle expanded beyond the immediate conflict, transforming into a complex demonstration of human capability that would reshape galactic understanding. Other civilizations began to watch. Passive monitoring systems across multiple star systems, capturing every moment of the unprecedented engagement between humanity and the Krail Imperium. The Consolidated Stellar Alliance, CSA, communication networks lit up with increasingly frantic analysis requests. Long-standing member civilizations had watched the Krail systematically consume dozens of technological societies. Now, those same civilizations witnessed something entirely unprecedented, a seemingly developing species not just resisting, but fundamentally dismantling the most sophisticated invasion force in galactic history. Admiral Helena Rodriguez understood the broader strategic implications. This was more than a military engagement. It was a statement, a declaration of humanity's true potential that would echo through galactic communication networks for generations. The human fleet's tactical approach defied every known principle of space combat. Where traditional military strategies relied on direct confrontation, the human vessels moved with a fluidity that suggested something beyond standard combat programming. They were not just fighting, they were demonstrating a level of adaptive intelligence that challenged fundamental assumptions about technological development. Vornak's command systems began to fragment. Computational models that had successfully conquered hundreds of civilizations now generated nothing but error messages. The human fleet didn't just counter the Krail's strategies. They actively transformed the entire nature of the engagement, turning each moment of conflict into an unpredictable variable that destroyed every known invasion protocol. Communication intercepts revealed the growing desperation within the Krail fleet. Their rigid hierarchical structure, which had been a source of strength in previous conquests, now became a critical vulnerability. Each unsuccessful engagement eroded the collective confidence of the invasion force, introducing levels of uncertainty that their biomechanical intelligence could not process. The turning point came not through a single decisive battle, but through a series of increasingly complex engagements that systematically dismantled the Krail's invasion strategy. Human vessels would appear and disappear, redirect entire weapon systems, and generate tactical scenarios that violated every known principle of space combat. Most critically, humanity demonstrated something unprecedented, the ability to transform limitation into opportunity. Where other civilizations had been systematically conquered, humans introduced a level of adaptive thinking that the Krail had never encountered. Each moment of the conflict became a complex dance of technological and psychological innovation. The Krail Imperium found itself facing an impossible scenario. Their most sophisticated invasion protocols were being systematically dismantled by a species they had initially considered primitive. Every computational model, every predictive algorithm began to generate more questions than answers. Humanity was no longer just defending itself. It was rewriting the fundamental understanding of technological warfare intelligence, and species-level capability. The final moments of the conflict transcended traditional military engagement. As the remaining Krail vessels were systematically neutralized, humanity prepared a message that would echo through galactic communication networks, a declaration that would fundamentally reshape interstellar politics. Admiral Helena Rodriguez stood on the bridge of the UES Defiance, her hands clasped behind her back as the holographic displays showed the final stages of the engagement. The battle was more than a military victory. It was a comprehensive demonstration of human potential that would challenge every existing paradigm of galactic civilization. The broadcast began simultaneously across multiple communication bands, a deliberate, calculated transmission that would be received by every major galactic civilization. It was not a message of conquest, but of introduction. Humanity was announcing itself to the universe, not as a supplicant or a developing species, but as a true galactic power. Dr. Marcus Chen had personally designed the communication protocols. The transmission was a complex multi-layered communication that would be interpreted differently by various species based on their unique perceptual capabilities. For some, it would appear as a series of mathematical sequences. For others, a linguistic declaration. For still others, a multidimensional information construct that defied traditional communication models. The Consolidated Stellar Alliance communication networks erupted with analysis requests. Civilizations that had watched the Krail Imperium consume dozens of technological societies now witnessed something unprecedented. A species that had not just survived an invasion, but comprehensively dismantled the most sophisticated conquest force in galactic history. Vornak's final transmission, a fragmented series of computational errors and desperate communication attempts, became a testament to humanity's technological supremacy. The once invincible Krail command systems had been reduced to a collection of confused and isolated systems, each desperately trying to understand what had happened. The human broadcast contained layers of information that would take decades to fully decode. It was simultaneously a declaration of peaceful intentions and a clear warning: humanity would not be overlooked or underestimated again. The message was crafted to demonstrate technological capabilities, while also showcasing a depth of cultural complexity that would challenge existing galactic classifications. Most critically, the transmission revealed humanity's true nature. This was not a species driven by conquest, but by an insatiable curiosity and an unprecedented capacity for adaptation. The galactic community would come to understand that human potential was limited only by imagination and collective will. As the last fragments of the Krail invasion fleet were neutralized, humanity completed its most important mission. They had not just defended themselves. They had fundamentally transformed the galactic understanding of what an emerging species could be. The galactic reckoning had begun, and humanity stood at its center, not as conquerors, but as a new kind of galactic civilization.